As modern-day population increases on the eastern shore, the oyster farming and development industries must change to accommodate this new growth. These three industries have great importance to the lives of people living in the area. On top of the everyday responsibilities of individuals maintaining a livelihood and creating a profitable business, the proximity of these industries to the Chesapeake Bay brings along the responsibility to maintain a sustainable bay for future generations.
I don't push for the industry. I push for myself. My responsibility is, at the end of the quarter that we made money, that we were profitable, and that's where my responsibilities lie to the owner of the company.
I think we have a self-sustaining oyster population. Whether or not aquaculture can bridge the gap between what we used to harvest and what we think we can harvest now, I think there's a really good opportunity for that to happen.
I think it's the only way to maintain a sustainable harvest. We're stepping in to fill a void that was created by the watermen and by the harvest methods.
Grown in oyster farms, you don't have an opportunity to, I guess in a way, get wild oysters the way that you can on the Chesapeake end, and the way you can connect directly with the captain and the crew and the boat that dredges them up or tongs them or however they catch them, and then actually purchase these at the dockside and enjoy them on the tailgate of a waterman's pickup truck. Again, for me, I know that at one time it was the mainstay in terms of the harvest from the Chesapeake Bay. Those days may be gone, but it's who we are. The oysters are a big part of us, and we need to be a big part of their future. I can't imagine them ever getting to the point where we won't continue to do everything we can to help them to survive. I truly do feel responsible to doing what I can to preserve that way of life.
You can't be an Eastern Shore native and not love working on the water or not love what the Chesapeake Bay means to you. So you can't have a healthy Chesapeake Bay without healthy oyster populations. You also can't have a healthy oyster fishery without healthy oyster populations. So the fishery and the ecology sort of go hand in hand. My old generation identifies with oysters and fish and crabs and whatever, and a Chesapeake Bay without those things in there, without those industries or without that population, just to me is less important. It's just not as nice a place to live around. As the oyster populations in the bay crashed, it became obvious that we, the collective we, which is most of the groups in Maryland that are working on oysters, need to try something different. Chesapeake Bay without a commercial fishing industry is a very different Chesapeake Bay than what most people in Maryland are used to. And I would like to think that we still have a commercial fishing industry in Maryland, not just for oysters, but for fishes and crabs. I think that if you look at it realistically, that fishery is going to change dramatically. It may not be the old Wild West hunting and gathering that we've seen in the past, or there may be segments of it that's open for public harvest, and there may be an increased segment that's private oyster farming. I think there's a place for both. The real tricky question of that is, will the Watermen's Society community allow that to happen? I'm optimistic that we're going to have an oyster fishery. I would say there's no question we're going to have an oyster fishery. Whether it's a public fishery only, whether it's a private fishery only, or whether it's some combination of that, remains to be seen. What I would love to see is that our watermen embrace aquaculture and start to do that themselves.
Change happens, so sustaining the oyster in an oyster industry doesn't mean freezing it in time. The watermen and any people that are dependent on extracting resources, I think have a very keen story to to tell, and in almost all cases there's an entire culture and tradition that's built up around that, whether you're a farmer or a fisherman. Those types of cultures really give an awful lot of meaning to who we are as Americans.
Us farmers, we think that if the watermen didn't catch so many oysters, and the oysters are the filter for the bay, there might not be the problems in the bay that there is. I think the state has caused a problem with what problem there is between the waterman and the farmer with bad publicity. I think the state needs to jump to and fix these outdated and worthless sewer plants that they've got. And maybe that'll correct the problem, and then neither one of us will be mad with the other. We've gone to major changes in the last 15 to 20 years.
How we've grown as a society of, now only 2% of our population are involved in our food production. Currently, each acre is feeding 144 people, and really, as our population grows, to not 8 billion, then to 9 billion, we really need that acre number of how many people it feeds to go up. But with that being said, conservation practices we have now are tremendous. Our fertilizers going farther. We don't need as much to produce a bushel of grain.
Used to be we treated chicken manure as a byproduct. We got rid of it and spread it on the land to get rid of it. Now we treat it as a fertilizer, and we only use it where it's needed.
I'm a proponent of use of poultry litter if used correctly. It's an organic source that releases its nutrients based on ground temperatures and weather conditions. So when applied correctly, it is more stable. It's just one of those things that, if used wrong or not managed correctly, yes, it can be a problem. But I think the state has done a good job, and the agriculture industry has done a good job about putting the regulations in place to make it a safe and very affordable source of nutrients. It's not saying, okay, we now trust poultry litter and completely not look at it anymore, but we need to be vigilant, saying, are people, using it correctly, storing it correctly, and applying it correctly.
I can't say that there isn't any business that doesn't have some type of negative effect. I don't feel the chicken manure problem is as big as the state plays that it is. But there's truck traffic and different things but I think it's a major plus to the Eastern Shore.
Poultry industry, gets a black eye just because it is the largest ag industry on the Delmarva, but it's also an important one. It gives it supplies a lot of jobs, and it's the backbone of agriculture on the shore. The farmers in our area get a very good basis or increased above market price on their commodity crops because of the poultry industry.
Without the poultry industry on the Eastern Shore, it'd be a very poor place to live. There's a major court case being heard right now or being decided, and if it goes the wrong direction, it's going to make a major problem with the poultry industry on the shore. And I think it will make a major change in how people live here on the Eastern Shore.
I think the biggest thing is that a lot of the farmers are more or less kind of scared or kind of walking on eggshells now with some newer lawsuits that have come out. They're involved in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit now, and as you know, farmers don't make multi-millions of dollars. So, issues like that, I think, help farmers to become more aware is a terrible outcome of the case, but it certainly brings awareness to farmers. I think farmers are absolutely more in touch with looking towards the future and sustainability of not just their own farming practices, but also other things that they're affecting, such as pollution into the bay and whatnot.
Farmers creating a sustainable bay for the future generation is important to the agriculture community, and they're taking a lot of steps over the past few decades to become much more sustainable and bay-friendly agriculture from, kind of the things that you hear about every day of planting, additional cover crop acres to best management practices, grass waterways, buffers, CRP ground.
Other things that farmers do, not just chemicals and runoff, but they actually try to stop runoff from cover crop programs. The root systems of these plants go down and stop erosion and chemicals and nutrients such as nitrogen from leaching into groundwater and ultimately into the bay.
We want to see as much green growing acres in the wintertime as we can, and that's a very important program.
Development and subdivisions, new stores, and as a city grows, the city grows more outward. There's more homes farther on the outskirts, so it's certainly taking over farmland.
Scattered out, model, even though it gives you a lot more acreage to grow food, you also have transportation costs and all of the negative side effects of that in a rural situation. So it's not one or the other. We'll need both, but there's tremendous untapped capacity to grow food in and around our towns and urban centers.
Areas are identified for development that are towns, villages, hamlets, and other small designated rural communities. These are places where either the infrastructure is there, like water or sewer, or there were existing subdivisions.
We ought to be doing everything we can to get people in tight development patterns that can be on public sewage systems, and because there's other benefits too. Things are walkable, so you have less atmospheric problems, less air pollution. It's better for our health. It's cheaper for other services like school and police and fire protection, and provide electricity and cable TV and everything else. So there are environmental consequences to development, fiscal consequences. There's impacts on traffic that impact other community members, and they should be responsible for all of that.
I think that most developers come into a project understanding and acknowledging that they have an important role in the development of a piece of land and in maintaining the integrity of the bay and also fulfilling all of the obligations that are regulatory in nature, from stormwater management to sediment control to environmental site design. A lot of the environmental regulations that we have in place now are a reaction to practices or a lack of practices from previous generations. Not that there was any negligence or malfeasance, it's just that as communities develop, they understand practices that might have been negative or might have been detrimental to a future success in an area. I think that the inherent responsibility to the next generation is at the core of a lot of these regulations.
As we understand the science better, it's an easier and easier case to make that developers should be responsible for the pollution coming off of their sites, including pollution that goes through the groundwater and takes many years to reach the bay. It's taken us 400 years to pollute the bay to the extent it's polluted now. It's going to take a long time for us to clean it up, and we're making significant progress, but it really takes everybody to have their oar in the water helping out. So we all have to be responsible for our own pollution, our own externalities. So I feel a tremendous responsibility to future generations. It really is the driver behind our work. And I think the driver behind all of the bay protection movement.
Although the future of the bay is uncertain, it is definite that people who work with the oyster, farming, and development industries of the area are acknowledging the importance of taking responsibility for ongoing issues. They work for changes that move towards sustaining the Chesapeake Bay and its surrounding industries for future generations. or if they do not, the health of the bay and the success of these industries will deteriorate.